What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video. In today's video we are going to be reviewing Skull Island Season 1 Episode 4, Breakfast Fit for a Kong. For anybody wondering why I stopped posting Skull Island reviews, it's simply because I got really burnt out really quickly. I realized that by binging the show and then trying to do these reviews all super fast, it was impacting my enjoyment of the show. So I needed to slow down, that way I didn't get angry with the show or anything like that, that way I could still enjoy it. And it worked, because I had a good time with this episode. I think honestly my biggest critique of this episode is the clickbait title, Breakfast Fit for a Kong. The dude has 1 second in the episode and all we see is his hand. Really gonna put him in the title of this one and then not use him, huh? I'm not typically one to complain about not putting your monster in your movie. Godzilla having limited screen time in the Godzilla movie, Kong having limited screen time in the Kong movie, works for me. This one just stuck out as particularly egregious because none of the other titles have Kong in them, so you'd think he'd be in this one a bit more. Okay, as per usual, spoilers for this episode of Skull Island. I'll be running through my thoughts on it, but again, I'm not doing a plot by plot, just things that I thought were worthy of some note. Yeah, I don't know why Charlie is so shocked to learn that dog can climb trees. Dude's got big claws. That seems like an obvious thing. I also don't know why Mike throws such a big fit. I don't remember how many times has Annie abandoned them so far. Annie abandons them right after the shipwreck. I don't really know if I would consider that abandoning them. She abandons them so that she can attack the guy. She finds them in the jungle with the crocodile and then they go into the woods. She's still right by their side. She didn't actually abandon them. They just thought she did. I don't really think she abandons them that often. I think that they're just dramatic. Specifically Mike. I think Mike's just a drama queen. Like maybe once, arguably. I guess he would argue maybe twice. I don't know. I like the big bird at the start of this episode. I like how they just stand there ready to fight it. And I honestly think they could have taken it. I like that guy because he reminds me of King Kong 2005. He's a lot of fun. And he's not the greatest friend for tricking them into being bait, but that's fine because, again, I always had faith in her. I thought she was going to be right by their side the whole time. I'm surprised they didn't realize that. I dislike dogs sitting like a man during this little conversation they have, and I'm also very curious about the brick texture behind Annie. It's very strange. Feels like they should have addressed that there's seemingly a human structure on the island that they just don't seem to care about. And yeah, I just thought dogs sitting like that kind of broke my immersion of the show. A little bit of testing my suspension of disbelief a little too far. Annie's backstory is quite interesting. I'm surprised they didn't really ask how old she was when she got stranded on that other island and how old she was when her dad died. Maybe she wouldn't know, but I feel like she's just a person from civilization who got stranded, which seems to be where they're leading with this. Obviously, she speaks English. You'd think that they would ask her, like, how old were you? And she would have some semblance of knowledge as to how old she was when she got stranded. But I do like the backstory. I also love the vine snakes. They're great, very Kong Skull Island. Again, going back to that flora fauna thing that I love so much. I've seen some people in the comments be like, what are you even freaking talking about flora fauna? That just means plant animal. Yeah, guys, I didn't invent the term. Houston Brooks in Kong Skull Island did. Remember the audio logs that came out with the movie where he says, Darwin had it easy. This isn't flora or fauna. This is flora fauna. Maybe I just know my Monsterverse lore. Catch up. I'm on it. Speaking of those Skull Island vine snakes, I'm pretty sure those attack some soldiers in the Kong Skull Island novelization. Again, showing that the Legendary Mythology team is actually more on it than I ever gave them credit for, which is fantastic. Legendary, hire me. I really want to be on your mythology team. That'd be like a dream. Hire me, Legendary. I'm now accepting jobs. I'm out of college. Give me a job. Please give me a job. One thing I did notice is that Skull Island isn't called Skull Island because it looks like a skull. Yes, I mean, it does look like a skull from above. They are right about that. But Bill Randa tells us that this place has been called Skull Island for long before satellites got pictures of it from up in the air. Long before that ever happened, this place was a legend called Skull Island. I don't know why it originally was called Skull Island. Maybe because it's got a giant mountain with a skull on it. That very well could be. But I did appreciate that this was a natural way to get some more foreshadowing that they are also planning on leaving by air. It seems our two groups are starting to align with each other without even realizing it. Our gang also now wants the radios that the other gang has. So both groups are headed to each other on a collision course that I'm excited to see play out in the next episode. Charlie falling into the the ant pit was a fun way to pay off Marlowe's warnings from Kong Skull Island. I've been waiting this whole show for giant ants to show up. I think it's fantastic that they do, but I loved that we got to see them. I wish they chirped like birds like they did in the Kong Skull Island movie though. Maybe those are different ants, because he says those ones are up in the trees and you gotta watch out for them. That's one of my favorite jokes in the movie. I don't understand the soldiers' plans still. I feel like they don't even understand their plans still. And then they did have that weird line about that there's a tracker in the handcuff, and it's just incredible technology. It was very strange exposition, and it felt like it's setting up for something very heavily. So maybe this really is a proto-Apex. Maybe they really are working for Apex or something, some mercenary group associated, because they've got some sort of incredible technology. It felt a little strange. In that flashback, Cap definitely sees Godzilla, right? Like, absolutely. He sees a dragon that glows blue in the ocean. That's very much Godzilla. It reminds me actually a lot of the King of the Monsters promos. This is unrelated, but I like that we get the aspect ratios in the flashback to make it more cinematic. I saw somebody comment on one of my previous videos. For that dude who commented on my previous videos, while I'm not really reading comments or responding to comments at the moment because I don't want spoilers, I'll get to them eventually, but to the dude whose comment did slip through that I did see it, yes, the aspect ratio changing is something that everybody has. It's not just your TV. But yeah, that guy definitely sees Godzilla. I had heard some rumors that there was a Godzilla cameo in the show before the show came out. I'm thinking that this probably was the Godzilla cameo. If there was ever supposed to be screen time of Godzilla, it must have been cut. I'm thinking this was the Godzilla cameo. I think this is it. I think it was just an Easter egg to Godzilla, kind of the way that it's very strongly implied in Kong Skull Island that the thing that took down Bill Randa's ship, the USS Loden, was Godzilla. I mean, straight up in production, they were gonna show photos of Godzilla during that scene, and Jordan Vogt Roberts asked them to cut it because he wanted it to be more of a King Kong movie, not a Godzilla movie, which is definitively the right call to make. Same reason I think we don't see Godzilla on screen here. I think they want to keep the conversation on Kong and not Godzilla. Good call. The carnivorous plants are a lot of fun. Reminds me of the movie Mothra. Also, Ultraman deals with carnivorous plants in one of the early episodes, so it reminds me a lot of that. I also loved learning that Irene is a botanist and a scientist who loves this freaking island. Makes me think that she might be from Monarch or Apex, but maybe Monarch. Dog also kind of sucks. I don't really like Dog still. He hasn't really grown on me. Annie being indifferent to her friend being trapped in an ant pit also is like kind of lame. She is not the best of friends for sure. Mike was right about that, but Mike, he's a real one. He is a homie. I love that he just goes down there with no plan to get them out. I appreciate that eventually Annie does join them, and it shows that she truly does like these guys and care for them, and I get it. She's socially awkward. She's been on an island her whole life. I don't think the audience should be judging her that hard. I actually don't judge the character that much. I think in her position, it's very natural for her to be the way she is. I think she's very well written in that regard. I'm not 100% sure what this whole detail with the sword was supposed to show, other than that people have been on this island for a long time. I mean, maybe that's just because they want this to stand on its own. So for people who don't really know the Skull Island mythos, this catches them up to date that people have been on this island for a long time and stranded here for a long time and been dying here for a long time. But for the rest of us, it really didn't accomplish much except eating up some screen time. The humor with the adult characters in this episode landed a lot better than the human with the teenagers in this episode. I thought that this episode I actually enjoyed the screen time with the adults more than with the kids. I loved how much weight and emphasis Cap put on the loss of that plant as a loss of life. It felt very Serizawa to me. It reminded me a lot of Serizawa's line in King of the Monsters, "I admire all forms of life." Then we go back to the teenagers where we get one of the weirdest Kong cameos possible. There's just a cameo where the Kong music starts playing. They say the big monkey's back. Kong's arm comes into frame and grabs a tree. Again, his arm's looking smaller than it should be, I think, but he grabs a big tree. It just felt strange. What was he grabbing that for? What is he doing? Does he just pick up trees a lot? We've only seen him do it twice in the movies because he's using them as weapons. Maybe it's because in like the 2005 film Kong Eats Trees, maybe it's kind of like that where he's munching on a tree. I'm not totally sure. Don't know what that was supposed to symbolize. But yeah, Kong shows up to grab a tree. Mike has bad friends, man. How does nobody notice how sick he is? Guy is visibly getting worse by the second and nobody seems to notice. I really think he actually might die in one of these episodes. I think towards the end of the show he might reunite Cap with his son and then just die. That'd be really sad if he does. I liked the big ant reveal where the skeleton slowly starts to get pulled away. That was nice and creepy. A good way to build suspense. I liked that they were building suspense here rather than just going for a big shock moment. And I love that Annie went down there to help them. Good for her. I'm not sure why the ant was so indestructible, however. You'll have to let me know in the comments. Maybe ants are a lot more armored in real life than I'm giving them credit for, but I would have assumed that he would have stabbed right into that ant's head the same way that they were able to shoot the mother longlegs into pieces. She was not armored, but maybe ants have stronger armor than spiders. I don't know. I'm sure they do. It makes sense sense that they would. They seem proportionally stronger, so I'm sure they would, but it was weird that the sword just snapped like that. I get that it's old as well. I get that too. Yeah, Annie kind of cringes me out sometimes. Her like whole, I killed everything with my hands. I don't know. Some of that stuff, it tests my suspension of disbelief a little too hard, but I loved the way she tricked Dog into helping her. It was a great reveal where he comes down to save her, and that was a lot of fun. I thought she was going to go for some sneak attack on the ant by playing dead, but I loved that it was to trick Dog into helping them. What fountain is Cap talking about? Because he mentions the fountain again in this episode. What is he talking about? He then decides that this island must be connected to the Hollow Earth. I don't like his visual depiction of the Hollow Earth. It's a little too accurate for me with the freaking sun down there in the mountains. Why is there a sun in the Hollow Earth? I don't know. It's also interesting that Irene knows about the Hollow Earth. I actually thought the Hollow Earth stuff in this episode was great. It was very interesting. I loved having a definitive, broader connection to the Monsterverse, especially where the Monsterverse is today. That was fantastic. But yeah, again, Houston Brooks didn't even know that there would be a sun down there. He thought it would be a big cave right under the island. He didn't realize that the actual inside of the planet was hollow, like Cap seems to know and like Irene seems to know. So that interested me a lot. One thing I was interested in is how did learning the guy's name calling on the radio help them identify which team was calling them? Do they know these guys' name? Is it just that they were worried to broadcast their names on the radio? Because it kind of felt like to me they don't use names at all. And now he's like, who are you? Tell me your name. And this guy tells him his name for the very first time. That still wouldn't identify what group you're talking about. Maybe he does know the name though. I don't know. Am I overthinking it? Yes, definitely. But I'm mostly just looking for a way to justify the fact that Mustache was a never named character. We never learned his name on screen. There's gotta be a reason for that, right? Maybe they just don't use names at all. Other than Irene, I guess. Her name is public. So now Irene wants to save the girl. Irene wants to save Annie, it seems, just because she knows that the kids are together and she seems to be forming this relationship with Cap. I actually really like her bond with Cap. I love their dynamic together, and I hope that Irene is legit and actually wants to save Annie. I think that's going to be a very interesting conflict to see play out, where Annie wants to kill Irene, but Irene no longer wants to kill Annie. However, I have a feeling Irene is just doing a little bit of a double cross as a bit of a trickster. Because why not just order your guys not to shoot on the radio? Why not just order them not to shoot? That'd be one way to solve it. How did they get out of that hole? Last we saw them, they were stuck in the hole and then they're just back up on the top of the ground. I get the Dog probably helped them out of there, but it seems suspicious to me that Dog would not save Charlie or Mike, but then brings all three of them back out with him. Seemed like they just edited their way around that problem. I liked Mike and Annie's bond at the end of this episode. I thought that was a great little moment. And this episode ends with a pretty good setup for the next one, with Dog and Annie running into pinch point while the bird is hunting them. All the teams are now closing in on them. Some of the teams are being hunted by vipers. All of our characters are about to come clashing together in the next episode, and I'm very excited about that. I think it's going to be a great action scene. I think everybody's going to get scrambled into new groups. It'd be interesting if, like, now Mike and Annie get separated together. Maybe Irene and Charlie get separated together, and so now they're trying to find their way back to Cap, and Cap winds up with the soldiers. Something like that could be an interesting way to shake things up. Or you go for it full force. You stick Irene and Annie together, and now the two of them are stuck together, and then you've got, like, Mike and Cap with some of the soldiers and Charlie with some of the other soldiers. That's another interesting way to split the group up. I do have a feeling, because we still have quite a few episodes left, that the gang is going to get all scrambled in the next episode, and then it will be trying to find their way back together. That's what I'm expecting. Overall, I thought this was a pretty solid episode. I liked it a lot better than I liked 3. I didn't think that it accomplished too much, and I felt that the Kong thing was a little clickbaity, but I appreciated the episode we got. I liked what we saw. I liked the expansion of the Monsterverse lore, and I'm excited for the next one. That'll do it for this one, guys, so I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you want to support the Patreon, you can using the link in the description below, where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. That's where I'll leave you. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man, out.